Well, hello,
Morning,
Kurt.
Dr. Brad. Why am I having this focus problem all of a
I don't
sudden?
know. I've been noticing that too. See, I can focus. I stay in focus. You do some very interesting things with your focus.
I usually can just raise my cup and it sees it. No, put it here. You don't understand. And I don't like it because, I get my joy out of the shared cup with you in the morning, right?
I know it's no good, and mine's even clean today.
So according
Oh, it's
to
filled with tea.
according to our secret off off video conversation, you've now ordered a new coffee machine.
I have, I have. It's like but it's not here yet, and I'm in just a disarray. It'll be all right. I followed your advice and sought that courage.
I love mine. I usually avoid fancy. I mean, I would be happy with iron skillets. You know what I mean? That's just. Uh, I usually avoid all this weird kitchen stuff, but my friend Todd Colby got one for his, and I'm like, wait, this works really good, and it's not messy. There's no. So my mom, I didn't get one because I'm such a fan of brewed coffee, but my mother had one, and she's my mother, right? So she got the most expensive one on for 25% of its original cost at the point it was on sale. And of course, she doesn't know that she got the expensive one at the. So she's, we'll buy another one. I'm like, Ma, you paid like $100 for this fucking thing, and it's like $600 today. It's not like that. You're not gonna. So, but anyway, so I love the thing. I've just disabled the sensor so that I don't have to be so careful about what kind of coffee thing I put inside it. So just
There you go.
don't have to tell anybody that it's on.
That's all secret.
Anyway, so it's good to talk to you. I was very pleased to talk to you today. Hey, we had a great chat yesterday. We did yesterday sex differences and a couple of other things yesterday,
Yeah.
which was quite profound. And the day before we did Friday, which we did the what's that video?
The video on the died suddenly.
Died suddenly video. We're getting enough traction now that we're saying our videos are too long now. Yeah.
Who's saying that?
Just one of the guys. The ideas are really good in here. So this is the difference, right? When Tim Pool's does his show, it's for entertainment, right? So you can listen to an hour of entertainment, but we do education. So it's pretty hard to listen to 2 hours of education, unless you're a certain kind of person. And so what they want, of course, is they want us to take and convert the stuff we openly discuss into basically condensed. They want there to be classroom form, or their own presentation form, so they can just get the gist of it. And I'm thinking that might be true, but if you take the stuff how we talk about things here, right, and we cover all these interactions, I can't do that.
I don't think you could do. It's not easy to summarize because you're making connections between things that are all over the map.
All over the map, and it's through the repetition of basic concepts from all these directions that gets the wisdom. I mean, that's how you learn to do it, right?
I think so, and it's interesting because there's certain verbal formulas, and there are certain axioms that are at work at all scales across all dimensions, and then just watching the interaction occur from all the different dimensions, and it makes the neural pathways reinforced.
Yes. So what I was thinking is, I'm like, yeah, I agree that we need the courseware, but I love these videos we do or these discourses because they end up being the classroom discussion. Right. And so I'm thinking, well, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, because we can take these classroom discussions, right, and we can link them to, also like yesterday's could link to 5 different content, contexts. And so, there's this sort of endless supply of, okay, you said this, but how does that play into the broader picture? And we can just link to all, because we've got zillions of these damn videos now, right? Cover freaking everything. And can I show something for the audience?
Yeah, obviously.
Obviously, Kurt. Where's my channel? Open up the channel. So here's let me share this. Where's the share button? No, show us faster. It's got 2.5 natural law. Okay.
Okay.
So here's our channel, right? And so this is just whatever we've produced recently, right? This is
Right.
and this is anything I've organized as a chat, right? Which is
Okay.
mostly this stuff here, right? Then this is the work on the method that you and I did work on together before I got too sick to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. This is the choice, which talks about how many. I have 30 something of them. How many of them are recorded? 11. Okay, so there's not. I've got a third of them up here. I've got the scripts for 30. Oops. And so that's the choice, which is here's our options given the future. And then I just have some thoughts. And then, of course, in addition to the method, I've got the foundations, which is the brain, mind, and consciousness, which is how the brain works. And I've got that through vision. What I don't have is the next 4 that I have here and stuff. And then my oldest ones, which was the introduction of proprietarianism. So there's a lot of content here. And I've begun to feel that it's a way easier to understand my work if you follow what if alt list. And I don't mean everything, because he does some experimental things, but his historical analysis is, I mean, if the difference between what we would say is 0, it approaches 0. I think the only thing you'd notice is that I have this specialty in the Abrahamic method of the seed, the feminine Abrahamic Marxist method of the seed. I tend to be far more critical of organized religion than he is, right? But aside from that, you're going to find the same. So it's sort of like I'm beginning to wonder if his stuff isn't a prerequisite for understanding my stuff, because it seems to be. But there's a lot of stuff up here, right? I mean, there's 7. Wait a minute, that's not the one. This is not the one I'm looking for. Where's just videos? We just have, there's hundreds. So there's an awful lot of content up there. So when somebody says to us, Doolittle, I mean, I can't spend, we've got thousands of hours up here. I can't afford to spend thousands of hours to learn this, right? I mean, they're not wrong, right? But we're very close to being able to. We're very close to being able to work full time, going back to producing what you saw in the method, right? Which is the sequence, the step-by-step walk through it all. So if we go down to method. And go down here.
You're not sharing now.
I'm not sure. I'm just seeing how far it is. It just gets through the grammars, right? It goes up to the grammars.
Right.
So we have a section basically on the mind and a section on the grammars. And you and I have been walking through and a section on the choice, so the choice of our future. The choice has as we go through it, it has most of the history in it, right? So there's in other words, I give the evolutionary history in that section, right? So there's a relationship between what's up here and the sections over there. So we will start moving to that. The thing is, I get a lot of joy out of Brad and I don't know if Brad, I think you do. I get a lot of joy out of this, and the audience does. So I don't want to stop this and do that. I want to do that in addition to this. And I don't know quite yet how we're going to do it, because the current events part of what we do is interesting for people, right? It removes it from being so abstract.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like that. I think that it ties it to what's happening.
Yes. And so it's one thing to work on. I mean, I love the logic, right? I mean, that's my autist just having when I get to work on logics or grammars, that's my inner autist is basically having sex, right? That's the equivalent of joy it gets out of it. But that's not what everybody else really wants. They want practical, applied solutions, and they want to be able to understand the world we live in. I don't know. Yesterday we did a pretty good job on weaving some important stuff together. So it's just hard not to have both. We're going to end up with, a 4-year education worth of volume up here without much difficulty.
Yeah. And it's an interesting function, because it is like the hard part as an adult to play catch up.
Yes.
Because you're busy.
Yes.
You're otherwise engaged, and you're working, and you're trying to be productive, and you're playing catch up, and it's a long way. It's a hard catch up. It's frustrating.
It's hard because your intuition wants to tell you other things, right? And I just imagine what it's like to be a church father and deal with Darwin and Maxwell, and it must be hard enough to be a church father and deal with Locke and Smith and Hume, because they're just basically saying, no, it's all cooperation. It's all just cooperation. We call it economics today, but economics is the term we use for measuring it at scale. But in the end result, it's just cooperation. What's cooperation? It's just morality. I mean, morality is cooperation. So, so you get down to this thing as the church has been teaching something for over 1,000 years, and you're a church father, you've invested your whole career in it, and all of a sudden these people, every year somebody pulls another rug out from under you, and they're like, "What the hell?" Right? I know I'm doing the right thing. Unfortunately, nobody came along like us and said, "Well, you are doing the right thing. Let's explain it to you." Let's explain how you can say it in theological, philosophical, and scientific terms, and it's all the same.
Right. But that's what's interesting to me from our conversation yesterday, was that the big difference is that the undetected, it's undetected what you have detected, which is this encroachment of feminine intuition into the polity.
Yes.
That is the key thing that has occurred over the last 250 years.
Yes.
And it's like it's undetected by all other standards. Nobody's talking about it.
Well, the problem is they detected Jewish introgression, and they detected that the Jewish mind was feminine. But they didn't put that two and two together. It's like it's not anything to do with Jews. It's the feminine mind, and the feminine mind hasn't been controlled. So it's like what I think is really obvious. Like, okay, now we're going to blame the Jews for being cognitively feminine, instead of blaming the cognitively feminine and then taking responsibility for suppressing the immorality of the cognitively feminine as thoroughly as we suppress the men. So the weird part is it's okay to say, well, Jews should be more masculine, but
That won't work.
but it's not okay to tell women they should be more rationally masculine. And and this gets back to why do we have this in our heads? I mean, I just don't know. I want women to be on a pedestal. Sorry, I do. I want.
I understand.
Is it because I need it to be true? In order to, I mean, what is causing men to want to see women as yummy, right? As pure. We want it, but it isn't true.
It's our preference.
It's our preference. So we're projecting our preference as thoroughly as women are projecting their preference. And this is, and in their case, they're causing harm. In our case, it's preventing us from preventing harm, right? I mean, I think that's finally how to talk about it. It's just like I've been trying to figure out how to explain this problem forever, right? I'm like, I just don't get why we put up with it, because we're projecting. I keep saying,
you don't want to believe it. It's like
we just don't want to believe it. They want to believe men are evil because if they don't, they have to take responsibility. Right? It's so obvious.
Well, men have to be evil because I was thinking about this too. There's a like the rational function is that we want it to be logically balanced. The rational tries to make it logically balanced, and the feminine tries to make it emotionally balanced, regardless of the emotional tangle or the logical tangles that inevitably ensue. And it's like, but even to comprehend that is hard for a rational mind.
Yes, exactly.
Because it just doesn't make any damn sense. It's like, how does that make any sense?
And you said it beautifully just now, because I always say, I know when I say they're emotionally consistent and we're logically consistent, that doesn't quite float it. That doesn't quite convey it. When I say they treat desirable and undesirable the way we treat true and false. In other words, they see the world, what we see as true and false is a statement about the universe. What they say as true and false is whether they approve and disapprove, which is their relation basically to men as a proxy for the universe, right? But why don't we know this? I mean, it's just weird to me.
It's not programmed into us as intuition, is why.
No, okay, wait a minute. Okay, so it's those biases are so programmed into us with intuition, and therefore we project them, that it overcomes any logical thing that would need to be programmed into us. But if the logic to do that was programmed into us, we just get pissed at each other.
Maybe.
I think it's got to be something along those lines. Because you see what I mean?
Right. But it may make it so that you can't.
Oh no, it's ABC. No, it's
what?
Your logic. The universe would have to remember. It can't. So how does it preserve it? By competition. Right? There's no way to know what logical is. So what you do is you preserve the competition, which constantly computes what survivable is. So fucking obvious. I hate what we learn. I mean, sometimes, you laugh at it all the time. Why is it so funny that these truths bother me and that makes you laugh? I mean, it's like you laugh at me at least 3 or 4 times a week because these things bother me. The irony, the frustration, the simplicity of it, and the inability for us to see what looks like in retrospect is patently obvious. It's just, what the fuck? It's just frustrating.
It
That's
is.
all it is. Of course.
No, but it's like it's the irony of it is what's interesting to me, I think, is what makes me laugh, because it tickles me, because it's ironic. It's
okay. So you laugh at it, and I'm appalled by it. But it's the same. It's just two different reactions to the same.
it's
problem.
reactions to a joke.
And the answer is that that's because you have a far more evolved
That's what it is.
stoicism than I have. Right? I'm still,
You're still irritable.
I'm still a fucking sap. I mean, I'm
Oh
just
my.
admitting.
Oh my.
I'm open to the fact of the reality that I'm a sap, right? I'm a romantic, and I want to, I'm completely okay. It just that I don't get to the low level of stoicism you have, right? Because I want the world to be this lovely place that I'm a fucking idiot, right? I mean, I'm okay with being an idiot in that respect, right? The duality I can usually live with. And it's like, I can know women are extremely destructive beyond their scale of competency, but I can still love them.
I know.
I love children, despite the fact that Jesus, they're a fucking nightmare, right? I love the right, especially despite that they're such fucking blockheads, right? I mean, I absolutely love them, right? Because they want to do good, they want to do the right thing. They want to be responsible.
Boy, oh boy.
So I can
live. It's a conundrum. The world is convoluted. Just a mess. And it's like, what's that mean? It's the interesting function of it is the truth versus the biases, the things we want to believe. And overcoming our own intrinsic biases, right? Because we don't feel like doing it at all.
Well, you brought this up yesterday, which is that women are always trying to be busy with some goddamn thing or other, and we're happier as long as we've got meat, beer, weapons, and fire, and something to talk about so we can burp and fart. We're good, right? It's the only reason we need to do anything complicated in the world is to get chicks. That's it. Well, I mean, if we can't get chicks, then what's the point of doing anything complicated? I mean, we build civilization for the approval of women. And that's why, right? I mean, there's no other reason. So they generate demand and we generate supply. And the thing about them is there's no limit to their generation of demand. Well, there's no limit to us, obviously, no limit to our generation of supply. Look, we keep inventing in order to make them happy by competing for them. Now they're off saying, well, we can do everything men can do. Actually, no. You can displace men from the middle where it's easy, and leave men having to do the hard things of inventing and not. And in the end, you break down the ability of our group because now you're not being mothers, and men in the middle are saying, okay, I got nothing to do. And that's okay with me, because what's the difference in playing video games and going hunting? Not much.
That's
Pretty
right.
fun. I'm okay with that.
Oh my.
And so some of these guys, they just feel this. The only reason they want women at all is because they're alienated, right? Society's found there's no social order for them to fit into. But if we restored the social functions, we'd go back to saying it doesn't matter. You don't want women anyway. They're just they're really expensive, and and they reduce your quality of life a lot, they don't reduce your quality of life. They reduce your there's a problem with that quality of life metric, because without separating the men who who are happy without being married from the men who cannot, in other words, the men who are dysfunctional, right? They skew it off, right? So, I remember my father had a friend who said, I'm a confirmed bachelor. And I remember as a kid he had the Ford Thunderbird, and he would take. He had his boat. He had his house on the lake.
Just
Right.
all set up, just
Right. I mean, I'm like, okay, and I'm like, and so he'd take me for riding a speedboat on the lake. Right. This is the '60s. I was a kid. I was like 6. Right. I thought this guy was awesome. And he played musical instruments. He had a business, right? He had lots of guy friends. He hung out at the back then the American Legion and all this other stuff, right? So, and I thought he was an awesome guy, right? He wasn't gay or anything. It was just that he just like I just like the bachelor. Right? So he dated a few women in town, things like that. And I'm like, why is this a bad life? It's not.
right. Just saying.
So, but the problem is that somebody's got to have enough kids. You know, the more we have, the higher our taxes, the more demand for children. I mean,
The higher our taxes, the more demand for children.
well, because you have to produce surpluses to produce taxes. And these taxes, if they're produced for, excuse me, I should have clarified this, thank you. If you're going to do things like unemployment, medical, and Social Security, you need to have children to pay for them. That's
right.
And even if you lose the children, you don't produce, you save the money and don't produce the children, single parent model, then what happens is that you run out of people to produce, and you raise the cost of goods, reducing the purchasing power of, children are a good, just like
Yes.
any other good. You need bread, you need water, you need fire, and you need children. You need all those things, and you think that children are a separate thing that exists on their own, like they are delivered by storks or they sprout out of the ground like dandelions. That's not what happens, although it does happen with that degree of accident at times. You do need to produce them and pay the high cost of raising them if you want the intertemporal returns on children. One of the things we've done, of course, is we've made people blind to future to their future.
Yeah, they disconnect because somehow the popular consciousness is something to the effect of the government's taking care of it.
Ready to pause?
I don't know.
Phone?
No, it's just noise.
Okay.
No, it's just noise.
You see, Dr. Brett's very important.
Yeah, that's what it is.
In case he gets a call from the National Security Director, the CDC, the WHO, or someone else, he has
all those guys,
the hospital patient, God. How do you know when God's calling? Do you have a special?
He smacks me in the head. Like that sounds like a slap, just a slap.
Anyway, all right.
Yeah. So it's like there's a disconnect in the popular consciousness, which is you don't need to have kids because the government is redistributing the benefits of other people's children to you.
Exactly.
And it's like, so whereas 5 or 7 generations ago, it was clearly connected. Your kids are going to take care of you as you age. Now it's disconnected, and it's like what do we call it? It's disrupted the arrangement in the mind. And we see the falling birth rates, and it's like, okay, it's just the age that we live in is disconnected and disrupted.
Well, there's some truth to the population is exploding, but it's only exploding where it hasn't industrialized yet. Right? And it's largely Africa, right? I mean, otherwise, it just, as soon as you urbanize, the cost of children goes up and their value to you goes down. in many ways, right? But the problem is there's a minimum demand for children in order to perpetuate any system of redistribution in the country. And you've got to have replacement populations to continue to do that. And theoretically, you want not too much variation in that number. But if we're having an explosion in Africa, Africa is the country least able to feed itself. And it's the least developed and most unstable. But you look at Pakistan, what's going to happen to Pakistan? There's 220 million people. The people hate America, but wait till we remove the American order and people's food prices quadruple. And that's not going to be so our world, we need to have population. I think there's 100 million, 200 million too many people in America. I think the right population is around 220 million, not 350 or 400 or 500 million. But the infinite growth left doesn't like that, because it means that their false promise of endless growth was never true, right? And they just count on this endless growth in population to support their schemes. When the reality is that the Earth has a carrying capacity. It's far closer to 1 billion than it is 8 billion. Even our consumption, our pollution capacity is so high now that it's overwhelming. I mean, we almost can't compensate it with our production capacity. So we've got too many people, and we've got too many of the wrong people. Especially, well, Kurt, you can't make a value. Oh, sure I can. It's not a value judgment; it's an empirical judgment. The empirical judgment is the eugenicists were right. Right? You're going to have a problem if you just have uncontrolled population growth in the bottom, and you don't continue upward redistribution of population growth, because now you're reversing evolutionary progress. I mean, what Dutton said the other day was so beautiful. What
was that?
He said, we have a cost of dysgenics problem. And a cost of dysgenics problem. Now, I love that he talks about it. I talk about it. I wish I had his humor. I don't. But he talks about it. He addresses. If you listen to Roger Altist on history, you listen to who did I just mention? Ed Dutton for psychology, sociology. You listen to me for scale, right? Geostrategy. You listen to Economics Explained for a basic understanding of economics. And if you listen to Stoic Media, who's fabulous. For financial, you've got financial now. You've got economic intermediate. You've got Zihan for geostrategic, which is medium long term. You've got Woodall Hist for historical and very long term. You've got me for the geostrategy, the geostrategic consequences of everything, and the ultra long term decidability. So you have the time frame across this group of thinkers, and I actually think that's pretty useful. I would have in the past put what's his name, Canadian Jordan Peterson's class on his classes on psychology. I would just get rid of all his IDW stuff and later and ignore all that. But if we just do this, all his IDW and all his, it's just crap. But if you go through, I mean, it's not crap. it's not it's no longer science, it's now self-help, right? But if you listen to Jordan Peterson's psychology lectures, they're numbered, right?
Yep.
And you'll get confirmation of almost everything I say, which is really useful. He's quite good. And he is one of the few people that studied female antisocial behavior. So it's useful for me because I can show you somebody who does know what they're talking about when I hear it. If you listen to that series of people, you can get a pretty damn good education. I mean, in what we would consider political and social sciences. It's utterly amazing. And what's really weird is how young those people are. You know, I'm the oldest. What's his name? Ed Dutton's younger than I am, right? But the rest of these guys, they're going up 21 years old. You know, Zihan's, what is his 40s, mid 40s?
Okay.
Might be, you know, mid 40s.
There is something
economics is planned in his 30s. Stoicism, I think the guy's 23, which is what blows me away, is how good he is. It's like he's just not, he's never, I listen to like everything the guy produces and he never wrong. I listen to what if I'll pissed. He's 21 years old. And I listen to the guy, I'm like, he's never wrong. I mean, like never. I mean, we have a joke in engineering, it's called mean time between failure, right? Which is how long you can expect a thing to go before it has an error. And the other one is floating pins. Floating pins is when you have an IC chip, an integrated circuit chip, and for some reason, the same input causes a different pin, right? A floating pin causes some unpredictable output. You have no idea, right? This is the same thing. Mean time between failure. Well, so the way you look at it is how many errors do I detect in a person's reasoning over time? I can go, and I'm like, I mean, some of these guys, that group of people, I mean, I can pick on Zion a little bit because he's predicting very difficult things and he overreaches a little bit. But I mean, the rest of them, they're just, it's like, there's very low, I mean, it's like never wrong. And people say, how would you know? Like, I specialize in lying, you know, in ignorance, error, bias, and deceit. It's not necessary for me to know they're wrong. All I need to know is, did they use is it obvious they're making a claim that can't be made?
Oh, I see.
Does that make sense? It's a via negativa approach. So, and then if you combine that with just, you know, if you have enough historical knowledge across enough disciplines, you realize I see what error this is making. So by cataloging errors, which are small comparatively, but humans can only err so many ways, right? The scope of things you can detect the falsehood about, right? And the false is huge, right? Because the permutation, what we do is we permute and applied lying, applied ignorance, error, bias, and deceit is huge, right? Whereas the ways that we've documented for people to engage in fallacies of ignorance, error, bias, deceit, and projection, and undermining and canceling and subversion and sedition and treason, right? And we've looked at that, so we know how to identify the logic of each of those things, which just turns out easy. So the scope of things we can falsify is fucking enormous, right?
So the interesting function of it is this: your studies have made your sensitivity to fallacies much higher.
Yes.
Even though you can detect that there's a fallacious intrusion, although you may not know the facts that underlie it or should underlie it.
Yeah, all I have to know is that grammar is only used to lie. In other words, that logic is only used. But now, do I mean lying? Well, lie is just the term I use.
To generate injection of a fallacy into
injection of a fallacy into a conversation. So, I mean, So I just like you may not realize you're lying, right? So what's what a lie is? Well, a tort is a crime, right? You don't,
Right.
so, um, but anyway, I don't know. We might be taking this off a little bit too far, but it's an interesting observation to me. So, but I just wanted to what's amazing to me is you can just follow these guys and watch their back videos. And that's the entire time spectrum, right? From finance to economics to geostrategy to comparative history to comparative civilization to comparative means of logic and argument, etc. And that's a huge bit of education you can get online. And the important thing is, not only is it free, but you couldn't fucking get it before.
Mm-mm.
And the people who are doing it are less biased. They're not prohibited from saying truths by the academy.
Mm.
And so it's interesting, Peterson said this in the past, I think the education system moves out of the academy for exactly this reason. Right? So you look at the quality of work you can get from that group of people, and it's the fact that it's consistent across the time spectrum, right? From finance, this week, all the way to eternity, my work. It's like the consistency across that spectrum by all those thinkers is a validation in itself. Right? There's no variation in principles across this whole spectrum. So I look at them and, geez, we live in a wonderful time where it's for anybody who will just, you might have to listen to these things 5 times, right? I mean,
It's work.
right? But
Work.
and you're like, well, you're so desperate to know that you want the work of knowing to be over. It doesn't work that way.
I just want to have learned it all. Thank
Yeah,
you
it doesn't work. You're not going to happen. Right. And there's sort of like, you do have the problem of the base of the pyramid is so wide that it gets very hard you can get to feel lost without the social group to help you.
Right.
Bind things together and then move up level at a time. So one of the things our group is very good at is they run this one room schoolhouse type of thing. And everybody just gets, I mean, we've been here. It'll only be 2 years this January. And I mean, the quality of work they do is phenomenal. So we're not even organizing it yet. Right? We don't have it in a classroom structure yet. And you can see that started by the stuff I showed you earlier. The classroom structure, but people can learn it. But I mean, it's a lot tied together, sure, but it's free. Rudyard said, well, that's one of the things about what we're doing is you don't need it's one of the few, it's this discipline we're talking about, which is, broadly speaking, behavioral science, is the one discipline you can learn by yourself.
Yes.
So history and work outward is how you really do it. Right? You can really learn it by yourself. It's not like you've got to go to a math class and learn this, and you've got to do X hundred variations of this problem before you can internalize it. You have to listen to a lot of stuff to internalize it, right? But you can learn it by yourself without the classroom. In other words, it doesn't require you have tests and grades and problems and all this other stuff. You can just you can listen to things over and over again. I'm trying to think of who I listened to. I probably listened to Hayek repeatedly more than all others combined. Right? And when I was trying to figure out what was wrong with, in other words, I understood Hoppe was right about something, but I understood he was wrong about something. And it was happening when he was criticizing Popper. I just had to listen to some of those fucking things, I don't know, 10 times, 12 times before I was like, because you need to get your head in the space of his, right? You got to, and that took a while. And then when you're in the head of his space of his head, you sort of can see the world how he sees it. Then you start seeing, oh, I see what he's doing there.
Hmm.
Right? And so some people I would do that. And Rudyard's videos are worth listening to a couple of times often. But a faultist, right? His
Yeah.
videos are worth listening to a couple of times. And again, it's just not wrong. What's the difference between what he does and what I do? Well, I mean, I teach first principles. Right? That's the difference between the formal and the descriptive. Right? And he's doing the history, and I'm doing the understanding of that history. Why? I'm just doing the formal logic. I just think it's really interesting that you can do this all by yourself if you want to, and that's phenomenal. Is it easy? No. Would it be better in a classroom? Absolutely. But my point is, it's free. It's out there on YouTube.
This free thing is kind of an interesting terminology, because it's like, it's not free, because it takes work.
Yes,
it takes time. So there's an investment involved of life. You're going to put energy into it, and you're going to get benefit out of it because it improves your capacity to reason.
One of the things along those lines, I noticed when I did the first cut of the courseware, which failed, by the way. Well, everybody knows this because I talk about it all the time, but I failed. Is I started from the logic side, right? Which you and I have discussed. That was the worst possible direction. Why did I choose it? Because it's my favorite part, right? I mean, crash and burn.
This was just demonstration of your bias.
Yeah, it's also demonstrative. I would choose the hardest possible thing, right? Because it was right when you don't really need the logic until far later on, right? I mean, you need to sort of get what's going on first, right? So anyway, so I'm like, this is not working. And so the problem was when I was asked, is how do you come up with questions for a test, right? Which is it's way harder than people think. So now I've asked questions to test, and I was, well, if I'm having such a difficult problem creating questions for the quiz test, which are almost all, they have to all be short essay forms, multiple choice here.
Right.
That's because the people don't have enough information to be able to put into their own words. I can explain this stuff. So I mean, the point is that that's the problem with, that's the same problem with law faces, is there's no logic to law. There's just a whole lot of mumble jumble that you're learning, right? And and eventually you start to see consistencies in it, but they haven't formalized it like I have. So it's kind of a nightmare to learn, which is why it's hard to learn law, because there's no formal logic. And then why isn't there? Because if you did that, it wouldn't validate a lot of the shit that the state does, which is not lawful, right? I mean, so of course they've got to create a pseudoscience of teaching law. Anyway, I should say that procedure is quite good. In other words, there's a difference between the craft of law and the science of law. Right? There's the craft of law, which is really the laws of civil procedure, rules of evidence, etc. This is a purely craft. It's like learning how to build a house, right? You have to do certain things in certain orders, because otherwise it
makes a mess.
Right? You got to try to keep everything square along the way, right? Because otherwise it doesn't. So civil procedure, I hate it, right? It's what I have no patience for whatsoever. But that's mostly what the court is doing. It's trying to protect against error, bias, and deceit by the use of procedure. Then there's legislation. Well, legislation is all over the fucking map, right? Then there's and I'm going to put regulation in there too, which is legislation, regulation. And then there's Constitution, which is structured as natural law, but it's actually written as rights law. Fuck, right? And so now you've got natural law, which is what the foundation of common law is, right? Common law and natural law, which is just really what we call tort. Right? It's just law of property. And so you've got all this on, so that because there's no logic there, well, no formal logic, there's a lot of stuff in there. Well, the state can still say, well, we made this mistake in 1640, we can fix it. Right? We can ask the legislature to fix it. There's no reason the inconsistencies of our law can't be worked out. Quite the opposite. It's amazing how good our courts are. And eventually, that word eventually sucks, but
Yes.
eventually working stuff out. Because the courts are very aware of the fact that if you and I agree to something today and the court says it's legal or illegal or whatever, that if the court changes its mind, the court is now responsible for the previous error. The court's a little like the church in that we're infallible. They're not really saying they're infallible. They're saying that we have to not make any set of decisions we make that are wrong have to be reframed after the consequences of the previous become evident, right? And such that somebody brings it before us again, right? But they don't want to have the court inventing its own reforms, right? The court in this case, as we see today, which I'm talking about all the time, is it's trying to restore the common law, right? It's trying to restore that originalism, textualism, constructivism, which mean different things to the court and the law than it does to the public. So I'm using the public's term, which is words are systems of measurement at the point they were written down, like all measurements are systems of measurement as they were written down. And how do we know that? By the accumulated evidence of how that measurement was used at the time. And the reason we do that is so that any change to that system of measurement, law, must go through the people and their legislature before it goes into law, right? You may not bypass the people and legislature by appeal to the court, right? This is the problem. And so the court is trying to restore that common law because activists, what we call lawfare, no warfare, lawfare. What we call lawfare was so effective by the Jewish intellectuals in the 60s and 70s that this has become a tradition or legal system that they are trying to purge. They're trying to purge lawfare from the legal system, which is the means by which you use the court to circumvent the polity in the legislature. Because what it leads to is unsettled law. Whereas the court's trying to produce settled law, in other words, common law, and current legislation. And so their court's trying to say, look, if you guys haven't agreed, you haven't proven it by the legislature, and it isn't already settled law in the common law, then we ain't fucking doing it.
Yep.
Right? Go through the people and the legislature. So that's what the court's trying to restore. That'll take a generation, but they'll do it. And then we'll have our law back. But this whole fucking positive law movement by the post-war Jewish intellectuals has been a fucking nightmare. Not that it wasn't tried to start earlier by the progressives, right? Who are basically Christians, right? The Christians started it too, right? The women's movement started it, then the Christians started it, then the Jews started it.
It's all the same feminization of the polity.
Well, it's because they want to command. They don't want to develop consensus. Now, here's the trick. Why? Because that requires reason. There's rational logic consistency. So they're afraid. It's like what I said, the left doesn't conduct a rational argument, because if he told you what they're actually trying to do, we'd kill them all.
They don't tell you what they're trying to do because they don't know what they're trying to do besides maintain emotional stasis.
Well, no. There are people, I know there are people like me on the left who are very smart and make very detailed plans.
Oh, no, so they're cunning.
They're cunning, and there are people that follow them for the reasons you said, but it's not like it's a purely organic.
No, we understand what. So you're being conspiratorial. Now we've got another role reversal.
Oh, stop. I've always said it. There are people conspire by design, or you're such a dick.
I
Yeah,
live
it's
for this. I
What?
live for this.
such a dick. You're not gonna get me on that one.
Oh my, but it
You
is.
get me on enough things. That
It's
one.
like this. So it's like this. Now we're to the point where it's like this is that when you're talking about actual criminality.
I'm talking about actual criminality, right?
Oh
That's
wait,
sedition and
I want you to
treason.
know in addition
Lawfare.
in addition to ordering my coffee machine yesterday, I also ordered the button that I'm going to make my Eli button. Just so you know, I'm working on these problems. I have got lots of problems, and I'm trying to solve my little problems. And Amazon is acting as conduit for the solutions.
Now the question is, what do you? So I put on the one I want. I put call Eli, but a lot of people said just put skull pyramids. It's the same thing.
I think even just a single skull.
Oh no, it's got to be pyramid. Well, no, it's got to be pyramids. It's
I
got. I
know,
mean,
but
that's Eli. Skull pyramids.
I know.
You're just even three. Just three of them.
Three is a minimum.
Three. It's like call Eli Harmon, right? And we just need and I just want mine to say something like skull pyramids. You know what I mean? I just want, call Eli Harmon. He hasn't got back to me on that yet. I'm surprised. I said
Right?
that we were doing this yesterday, you and I, right?
Yes.
And he hasn't said anything back yet. I even posted the skull pyramid pictures. For the audience, if you don't know, Eli Harmon is our if it can be said hyperbolically and humorously, even though Eli's very smart, right? I mean, he knows the science of it all. But if he can represent it hyperbolically, like in Conan fashion, it will come out of his mouth, right? He will, right? So it's just sometimes you need the skull pyramid.
He's quiet,
version.
and he's quiet and calculating, and he's just distilling it all down until it boils into a skull pyramid somehow. It's okay.
All right.
Yeah, so the court is working to restore the common law as it was intended.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to take time. So it's like all the trends are correct.
All the trends are correct. The question is whether it's too late. Yeah, it was funny today. The Civil War is trending on Twitter again. And so I always go and see that's. And it's about a bunch of left-wing men without chests and women saying that we have guns too. Why do they think that the government and the military is going to side with them? Like, because the military said it was. That's what you're talking about. We have surveys. So I'm like, and the second thing is, well, they're all these conservatives are fat, and I'm like, who do they see? And my answer is, of course, they live in the talk economy, right? This Twitter group, these left wingers.
Okay.
But conservatives they don't play, but they don't sit on social media. They're out doing things. They work, right? They don't get their validation.
That's right. That's right. So my business.
I know my bodyguards, right? I have a group of guys I can call on to be my bodyguards, right? They are exactly the guys I met who were the volunteers in Ukraine. It's exactly the same kind of guy. You know how many syllables they use per word? 2, 3, right? You know how many words they speak in a sentence? 1 to 3. It's not about words to them.
Right.
One of those guys telling me, well, we killed X number of Russians with knives at night, and this is how we did it. Right? You don't mess with these guys. I mean, this is what these guys look. even the number of hunters in America, I don't know what it is, but we've seen leftists show up. They're not, they're just, they're not, they run from force at every opportunity. And they always work together. You see what we want? I don't want to, I'm not advocating this. I'm saying this is the problem, is I've explained this in race differences in violence. There's criminality and political violence, frequency and infrequency. The problem is you don't want a bunch of those white boys pissed off. You just don't. I mean, you can see that in the world, anywhere we're fighting in the world. You can see it in displays of violence in their own country. You know, it's a 1 to 10. It's a 1 to 10 effectiveness. Right? Even the British used to say, the French said this about the English, and the English said it about the Germans. You look what the Russians have to do for how many Russians it takes to defeat one Ukrainian. Well, look how many Ukrainians it would take to defeat one German. One German defeat one Englishman, one Englishman defeat one American. I'm not saying that's the exact order, but you get the idea. Is that people who talk are inversely, it's an inverse display of confidence and competence. You have no idea.
Yeah, it's like the quiet ones are underestimated by the talkers.
Right, and my problem with my public activity is that I attract the talkers because the guys don't want, the actors don't want to show up unless they explicitly have a mission.
That's exactly it. I talked to my business associate and he's like, he's not a talker. And he's like, he's not going to go to some protest. He's not going to do anything until someone breaks the glass.
Yes. And then
you don't want to be anywhere near it's the Tasmanian devil.
I don't understand why they can live in a little fucking fantasy world. I know why it is, right? It's because they live in this world of talkers, right? And they think that's what a conservative is, right? Oh, conservatives got talking, but I mean, we've also got guys who don't talk. I mean, that's the difference between left and right. Different men and women, talking women and non-talking men. I just don't get it, and I don't like that they're not afraid of it because then they're not taking the problem seriously enough. In other words, one of the things I want to remove is a plausible deniability that the right would win, which is what I was trying to do actually in 2019.
Okay.
I want to take away the plausible deniability that right would win, so that both sides go, so the left is willing to come to the table and negotiate to get a peaceful separation. But you know, the problem is that the right's its own worst enemy. If they want you to go out there and have a fucking brawl, that online right does, and they ruin every conversation. So you can't fix the boys. You can't fix them to reason. You need an authority figure.
Right. So yeah.
Okay, so can I switch topics? This was getting boring. Not boring. It's getting making me sad. Is that okay?
It's just fine. I'll drink some tea. It will make me happy.
So I'm happy to, as Elon Musk put out his little, this is the changes we're going to do to Twitter thing. And
yes.
He's doing two things. What is video? Yay!
Oh.
Right, so we're going to get a YouTube replacement.
Oh, okay.
His solution to advertising is games. Advertising is entertainment, which is brilliant. It's more costly, but it's more engaging.
Well, you could make it into a neurotransmitter operation and you're a winner.
Yeah, we already know, we know what works. The problem is you've got to raise the investment necessary to make the advertising. Well, this means that you'll get less but better advertising, right? And that attracts the best brands. right? Because that's who can afford to make the investment in the advertising. Or you'll find new brands that have a novel approach. That's good. But the thing that matters to me the most, of course, he added payments, right? Payments, which will be great because he's planning the ability to make us have Twitter Pay, right? Twitter Pay. Right? But what's more important is that he's between that advertising, the videos, and the payments. He's now creating an economy that isn't so dependent upon advertising.
Yes.
Right? And it's creating more engagement. He's also threatening YouTube, which I like. And then what he's threatening Facebook is he's added long form, which is what I do. In other words, to be able to make arguments again.
Yes.
This chain of tweets that people drop off on. They read the first one and not the chain because it just doesn't facilitate. You've got to use this hack to get the whole thing in there. So we've got the edit button already, but the long form and the videos. I'm like, long form means there's no value to Facebook anymore. He probably, the only thing I wish he'd work on is a profile page. So for my profile, I could have a more Facebooky brand. Right,
This is a funny thing. The Antifas are actively plotting against Tesla is the story that I read today. And that caused me to think, because my neighbor down the street, my good socialist doctor friend, he drives a Tesla, and I wonder how he feels about that right now.
Well, I mean,
I don't have the heart to ask him.
They have to be ideological to say that they're environmental and liberal, while blaming Tesla, which is trying to bring about the exact change they asked for. Right, and so he's got, it's just pretty hard to argue with what he does there. Now, what somebody else said is yesterday. I can't remember what it was yesterday. I see the path to $1 trillion company for Twitter under Elon. Right. And what I saw this morning was Eli saying, I'll have 1 billion users within 18 months. Right. And he's right. He's going to have 1 billion users. I mean, because there's no reason you can't have a fucking TikTok. TikTok is the short ones. Is that the one? I think that's it. The TikTok view, you can have the long video view, right? And so you can just sort by that stuff and just get whatever experience you want, right? And just by tabbing, right? So who's losing here? The people who are losing are journalists, right? Because that's the purpose of the blue check mark is you're a journalist we agree with. You're a public intellectual we agree with. That's the purpose of it. Now, they exposed also yesterday that Twitter employees were selling blue check marks for $10,000 to $15,000. Right, so that was going on. So yeah, all right. So the more Elon says, the more you learn, the worse it is. Right, you learn the worse it is. But what he's doing with his check marks is you put your company affiliation on there, a logo. So that's the substitute for the journalists, right? Is that they get to put their logo there. Like I'll put the Institute logo, I'll put the little swan. So I think that's legit because I'm a professional according to Twitter, right? I don't get a blue check mark, but I'm a professional. We'll be able to put up our logo. I'll probably get a check mark anyway. I mean, I'll certainly pay for the check mark, but whether I get it's blue for verified, gray for government, and gold for I think it's business.
I don't know.
Right, and then you get your logo, something like that. I kind of like notability, but I'd be okay with what?
You're a little bit muffled there.
I kind of like note. Is that better?
Yes.
Right. Make sure I'm not. How's that? Yeah.
Okay.
I like notability. In other words, I don't What he's saying is there's no unbiased way of determining who's notable. It's not possible. And so his solution is the corporate branding. And is the branding.
Right.
And so I think that's probably right. I would charge for notability.
Yep.
Go for it, and that's all I would do. I would make that a higher fee. And then the company's got to approve it. So I think I like that. This is, I think, of somebody who's a public intellectual that is legit, like Razib Khan, or what's her name, HBD chick, or J-Man, who are all in genetics. Razib Khan, HBD, J-Man, and culture and family, right, which is HBD chick, right? These three people. Well, I mean, they're all independents. Well, so how do they fix that problem of notability? Well, they just form a corporation, whatever. So my problem is I want those people to be notable because there is a class of people who are demonstrably excellent in their field. And so I don't, but there are, the problem is, how do you know? I mean, so some journalist will work for some shit rag, right? And there's a million of these people, and they think they should be notable because they publish. Their job is to produce nonsense, right? Well, that's different from somebody empirical, right? Like Razib Khan, genetics, J-Man, HBD chip. Right? These people are unconsidered part of that HBD community for some reason. I don't know why. So that's probably worth it. Because the reason I'm most popular on Quora, most popular, and it's amazing to me how many reads I get on Quora, right? For stuff that's like 10 years old, which is that I just answer those race questions.
Okay.
And I just do it with the science, and people like it. Right? Are these people, part of this? No, this is why, right? Right? What are the Turks? Turks are fascinating because they're a fucking, blender, right? But it turns out they're mostly Greek, right? Which is what you'd expect, right? I mean, it's just
why they hate the Greeks so much.
Well, it's just, how do you say? I'm so proud of being a Turk. It turns out I'm Greek, right? I mean, it's just like
it's the irony of it.
It's just, I totally get it, right? I mean, I completely understand their frustration. Or it's like the Indian nationalists. No, we were the source of the Indo-Europeans. No, you're actually the last place it got to. There's just a lot of you, right? And so that bothers them. China's got a chip on its shoulder because they got left behind in 1400. Well, it's because they stagnated in 800, and there was no way to get to you. Nowhere to get to you over those geographies, and so your stagnation wasn't that painful. It was allowed for incremental evolution. Or the Muslims, it's like, we ruled the world, we was kings. I'm like, yeah, but actually worked backwards. You devolved civilizations instead. And then the Africa's like, we was kings. Well, you actually were, and you're doing a pretty good job of it. But, you weren't organized enough when modernity came knocking, right? So, I mean, everybody's got their thing, and, white people are like, yeah, but we had all these wars. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly why we evolved so fast. So, everybody's got their own little,
Yeah. That's right.
Okay, so Elon Musk came out with these changes. So my view is he's doing the right thing. Usage is way the heck up, right? Everything, right? And so the activists threaten brands so that their advertising revenues go up.
Yeah.
But I love, my favorite thing is he fires 75% of the people, but everything's getting better. What happened? It's like, this is a lesson for everybody. What if General Motors did that?
Yeah. This I will tie it back to the trends are all in the right direction, which is the lefties are justifying the squelching of free speech. And that works in our favor because we disagree with them that speech should not be unfettered and fallacious speech should not be allowed from public.
Well, fallacious and irreciprocal, yes.
Now, okay, I appreciate the clarification.
It's more that irreciprocal speech shouldn't be, and that includes immoral and untruthful. Right? And so the problem is the left lives by false promise,
Okay.
by social construction. In other words, the left lives by lying. Now, do they know it's lying? No, it's wishful thinking for them. Right? It's wishful thinking.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And they think it's possible because they're basically the equivalent of colorblind time, which we discussed yesterday.
Yes.
And so they see conservatives who mirror the laws of nature as the oppressors, rather than that mirrors the right benefits from mirroring nature. And the left blames whites, conservatives, as if we invented these things rather than we observed and adapted to these things.
The limits.
These limits.
Natural limits. They regard the natural limits as oppression.
Yeah. Well, and that's how they do it, right? This is how they blame. They can engage in critique and undermining because you can't undermine the natural laws. So you have to undermine the people that observe the natural laws. And you have to undermine the people that observe the natural laws as oppressors. And that's what they have right there. That there's no other choice for them. They either have to admit that the laws of they have to say those natures don't exist, right? Or they have to blame people who observe, capture them, and adapt to them as oppressors. But they can't tolerate those laws because those laws of scarcity, behavior, or whatever, are limits on their hyperconsumption, hypergamy, and emotionality. In other words, their hyperconsumption. I said hyperconsumption, hypergamy, right? That's all that matters. Same thing. Specialization and consumption. So that they can't tolerate that there are limits in the world. So they try to socially construct an alternate reality, and by belief, as if belief is what the problem is, rather than natural limits. The right just observes natural limits. It's really insane when you think about it. But that's why
wishing their way out of the box.
Yeah, it just. But try to convince women. It's the same fucking thing. It doesn't matter if you reason with a woman. You'll never convince her to give up her emotions on the subject.
It's a crazy thing to ask for. It's like it's not an intelligent thing to ask for.
Right. You shouldn't ask them for it. You just say, "Oh, it's good."
Right. So
I'm stronger than you, so that's the way it's going to be. And that's the only answer.
This goes to a conversation I had with my father. Right. The children in the car voted to go do something, and my dad just says, "It's not a democracy."
How was your father, by the way?
He's awesome. He's doing well.
I think you told me a couple of weeks ago, when he's like, I tried to talk to my dad and that was a mistake or something along those lines.
Sometimes it's like his
dad's a military historian. He specializes in something I understand, which is basically military technology of the post-war era, right? I mean, that's about right.
Aviation history, yeah. Military aviation, subspecialization, yeah. So he wrote all about the Second War and the bombings and
so the point is the guy's not an idiot, right? I mean,
not at all.
He's not some Archie Bunker type when you're talking about your grandfather.
No, he's an Air Force
right.
Academy guy.
Yeah.
And but I think he worked with that in the academy for too long and it messed his head up. Right? Because it's like he's a good liberal 20th century guy. And it's like the issue is this, the we're in the epoch of the failure of the Anglo-American Empire, which was taken over by the Americans after the Second War because the Brits couldn't afford it. And the rules and the morals and the functionality of everything is diametrically opposed to that liberal settlement. That what's really happening is antithetical to what had occurred and what passed as good and true in the 20th century doesn't pass muster in the 21st century. So it's like, I'm not going to convince him that otherwise. I'm not going to try. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, you're right, because people have built their own frame on metaphysics at this point.
Yeah.
And they've invested it so heavily that, first of all, it's they have no way to obtain value anymore outside of it, right? They're too late in life to obtain value. And even if they did, they wouldn't know how to start. I mean, you do see people go through iterations of personal reform, but it's a few people, right? You do see people remake themselves. I always look at Hayek as doing the same thing I did. He started out psychology or neuroscience, right? Then he went to economics and then to law, right? And he just reformed his field every time his field ran out of gas, right? And so, oh, it's shit. Turns out it's just law, right? I mean, right? Which is fascinating. I mean, because I went through the same exact path. Right? So, except I did it through computer, artificial intelligence, right? Then economics, then law. So people do reform, but they're rare. It's mostly people who are polymathic that reform. But people who are specialized tend not to reform. They have nowhere to go, right? They don't want to start all over, right?
That's right, because it's like you're starting from none. You've got none.
None.
Like you're starting from a very focused consciousness, and you have to broad spectrum consciousness to understand what's really going on. And where do you start? It's too big of a task.
That's right.
And you are nothing in there. You've just diminished your own.
Right. You don't want to step, if you're a professor, you're accomplished, whatever, you don't want to throw it out the window and start over. Like, can you imagine, like, it's like one thing if you're like, a House member and you say, I'm going to switch parties because my constituencies actually, I'm on the borderline, right, between the two parties. My constituencies want me to move to this side. Well, that's one thing. But like if you're like an ideological leftist in the Congress for 40 years, you don't change, right? That's like Reagan said, the party moved out from underneath me. I didn't move at all, right? Which is the history of the Democratic Party in America, right? It just keeps moving further left. And so the center looks more and more right. Right. So that's
right. So I'm like, well, I watch my dad. I call him. He's like the bellwether. It's like the canary in the coal mine, because you just ask him questions about some current event, right? And then you see either a cognitive dissonance or he moves, right? And it's like you generally get a cognitive dissonance because it's like he'll make up some reason why that he can maintain his bias.
Yes.
And I just use him as a detector. I'm not trying.
It's great to have people in your life who can use the detectors. Yes.
Just like that, just test the weather and see what happens. And it's like, see if that shit rattles him a little bit. Or I saw him move once. And I was like, whoa, that's.
Yeah, you're always surprised when they move.
Right.
So I was going somewhere. So this is how now imagine you're not just an intellectual or just a politician, but you're a bureaucrat. Your whole income stream, all your alliances, all whatever, is based on the order. Right? First of all, you can't imagine an alternative order. If you could, you have no value in it, and you'd have to start over. So in the academy, what we say is disciplines reform as people die. Right? And so what I was going to say, based on your story there, was that in '92, just the wall has fallen, right?
Right.
We didn't have that fix back then. Instead, we celebrated.
Yeah.
when we would have really needed, we celebrated, we doubled down, used the existing institutions. What we needed was the George Bush character, to the first George Bush. We needed him to be elected long enough to make the reforms he saw, and we kicked him out. We had nobody in there to do that, just like we had nobody in the church in 1870 to repair the church. We just didn't have these people. So what I wonder is this just a matter of things are changing faster than people can die?
That's an interesting, like, that's messed up, man.
Oh, sorry, I had to say it that way just for the humor. I mean, the irony of that was beautiful, really. But things are changing faster than people die, and so
the rate of change is greater than the speed of death.
Yes, which is the way the knowledge turns over.
Yes.
Whereas in history, it takes like 3 generations. Like, people say there was more difference between 1850 and 1900 than there had been in all of human history, right?
Right.
So, living in that period must have been really fucking awesome, to be honest with you. Or Paris in the 20s, or as I lived, Seattle in the 90s. That was Paris in the 20s. No, New York in the 10s, Paris in the 20s. London in the 1880s, 1890s. London, America, New York in the 10s, the zeros to 10s, the odds. Paris in the 20s. There wasn't anywhere good in the middle there. There was Berlin maybe in the 30s. I don't know, somewhere in there. And certainly Seattle in the 90s. It just doesn't get better than it. In America, I can't imagine it being better than Seattle in the 90s. Is awesome. I knew something good was going on, and I knew I was living in privileged times, but I didn't realize how scarce that was in history, or how extreme that quality of life was. There was probably some feeling about that in California in the 60s, maybe. Yeah. But it was a different nature. Anyway, so these things happen. But the problem is when we're going through these changes like we are now, we're going to have more change. This is going to be, historically, it's going to look like we had more change from 2008 to 2030, which is just 20 years, one generation. We're going to have more change in this generation than we had in the past century. Right, and that's just it's gonna.
Sotto voce. It's gonna be like it is, and it's like what's interesting is it looks like it's cuts towards truth, although there will be great resistance to it.
Well, the post-war model we created, which was to burn our middle and laboring classes in order to raise the rest of the world out of poverty, they would avoid the catastrophe of communism and the expansion of the Soviets. Well, we paid that high price, but now there's no dividend from not paying that price. Does that make sense? And what we did is we spent that dividend in the 90s, the 90s up to 2001. We spent a hell of a dividend. But the way we paid for all that was Reagan's weaponization of the financial system against the Soviets. We weaponized our labor force, then we weaponized the economy, then we weaponized the financial system, and we've weaponized the financial system, which we should have stopped. And they kept trying to run with it. And I know at the time what we were thinking for the audience. This stuff never gets written down, right? Because it's sort of like in the gestalt, right, of the politicals frame, and it doesn't get captured or written down. But what we were thinking at the time was that liberalism, leftism would run out of gas, as it had in the communists and the Democrat and the socialists, and now the Democratic. We said it's going to run out of gas, and so we're all set, right? But what happened is we didn't account for immigration.
We didn't what?
Account for immigration. So immigration achieved, in other words, the conservatives would have won. It was the left didn't win by ideas; they won by immigration.
I think that was their plan.
It was well. They don't do it that way. They don't think like us. They attack every opportunity equally, and so it was one of their plans. The success they had at immigration, though, from South America, and they paid these people for it. They financed it. Like I said, it's a crime. Right? Immigration's a crime. They're paying for it to be done on purpose. Is they achieved by immigration what they couldn't achieve by ideas. So if you look at the voting, conservatives would have won, but we didn't win because of immigration, and we're having the same problem in Europe. We can't win anymore because of immigration and because the academy has been the academy and state have been captured. So, but if you look at the data, we at the time back then, we thought that we were going to win because we were looking at the evidence. And all the leftist programs worldwide were failing. But those were scientific programs, they weren't religions. And by the woke has moved into full religious movement. Right? I mean, postmodernism is a philosophical movement. So let's see if I can do this for the audience. The Marxists, the neo-Marxists were pseudoscientific movements. The postmodernists were sophistry or philosophical movements, and woke is a religious movement. And so what happens is, how do you kill a religious movement? It's on your fucking head. Whereas we could defeat the postmodern.
Say that again, please.
You can't defeat a religious movement because the shit's all in your head, right? You could defeat the postmodernists because we eventually did with science. We eventually defeated the Marxists and cultural Marxists with evidence and science. But how do you defeat a religion? And woke's a religion. It's a religion that says we're oppressed or constrained. And it's only through the self-construction of a falsehood that we can obtain power and victory. But what's postmodernism? It says it's all about power. It's not about truth. Right? And then the Marxists, neo-Marxists saying it's all about cultural institutions. And the Marxists saying it's all about economic institutions. And so they just, every single time, they work their way up the tree of abstraction to the point where it a religion.
So you can make their false religion illegal.
Yes.
And you can make the institution of it by the state to be illegal, which it is, because it's an institution of a religion.
Yes. That's why I say we have two avenues left. We're not going to win by convincing them. We never could.
No.
And this is why I call conservatives stupid. For that reason. And we would have won by outcomes empirically if it hadn't been by immigration. But because of immigration, now we can't win by the vote. So now we have two choices left. We have either we win by court by restoring the Constitution and prohibiting the government from engaging in a religion. And we prohibit the government and any other academic institution, any institution, from teaching a fraud, which is a false promise of freedom from laws of nature. And if we don't win by the court, we have to do the common law suit against the state, which is an appeal to the legislature because we have no king, which is really the fucking problem. For this reason alone, that's why you have a king, right? It doesn't matter. You can make it no difference if a king exists for no other reason than this. It's worth having it, so the king can say, "This is okay. This is enough." And then, lastly, if that doesn't happen, we have to go to war. So we've not. It's like one of those things. There's 5 choices. We've knocked 2 off of them, and they're the easy ones.
We tried.
The next one is the court, and that's harder. And I don't have any idea if it'll work. It's true. We're right, but will the court decide it? The legislature is after that. Is the legislature going to decide it? Well, unlike the court has to accept or deny. The legislature can ignore. So you have to show up and force the legislature, which is a common law.
It's the King John solution, I call it.
Yes, it's right. And if that doesn't save through, like we tried every moral avenue. We tried reason, we tried democracy, we tried the courts, we tried the parliament, right? And our only choice left is war. But at that point, you've got, there's no question of the moral high ground. Now, has the left done anything like that moral high ground? They've engaged in lawfare, sedition, treason, undermining, march of the institutions, and said what they're going to do, and they've done it. And what are they doing? They're doing it by lying. They're selling a fraud that there's a possibility to be free of the laws of nature, and there isn't. Now, you may scientifically say, we're going to produce a method we're going to produce a massive investment in genetic engineering to fix the problems of the class distribution. I'm okay with that, right? I mean, that's not, but you can't deny the problem that the classes are just a description of genetic load. They're a measure of genetic load. That's all it is. And it's like capitalism, right? The middle is the top. Anybody above the middle is lucky, right? But that's the difference for saying that anyone below the level is unlucky, right? Below the middle they're not unlucky; they're genetically loaded. As long as you have the ability to move between classes, and you choose not to, there's a reason for it. So, did I make that evident? Did I make that claim clearly enough to get in the class?
Do it again just for the audience.
All right, so I'm okay with genetic engineering. I'm on the we should not make people into machines. I don't even really want to augment people with machines, right? I think that's a really scary future. Having more like this and more access to information, but physically altering people starts to be really dangerous to me. All right. But saying we're going to genetically engineer people, that's very hard. But improving the genetics of people, right, over generations, that fixes the class problem. Well, so does eugenics. In other words, not suppressing the reproduction of the lower classes. Well, I'm okay with either or both of those. What I'm not okay with is denying. In other words, I'm not okay with. It's not legal if you can't make a moral claim that we can deny that the classes are the result of the accumulated genetic load. They are the result of accumulated genetic load, or conversely, the failure of the spread of genetic gains.
The failure of the spread of
genetic gains.
Yes.
Right. This failure of spread of neoteny or the accumulation of genetic load. Right. There's two basic directions to it. Right. So that's what makes for class differences. So, so if you want to get around the problem that way, great, but you're not getting around natural selection. It's not going to happen. Right. You're not getting around the fact that you can't have infinite growth because there's scarcity. You're not getting around the human nature, which is self-interest, the sex differences in cognition, and the necessity of ternary functions and trinaryism in order to make sure that we're continuously evolving. In other words, surviving as a species. You're not going to get around to those things. So you're not going to have a communist. It's not going to happen. The only that communism is absolute poverty. So, in any event, so you're not. Why is it possible to promise people these frauds? Why is it possible to promise people freedom from logic, freedom from science, freedom from scarcity, freedom from human behavior, and freedom from natural selection? If you're doing any of those things, you're committing fraud, right? So I think the government just needs to position as just as there's no commercial fraud, there's no political fraud. And that's all I'm trying to get away with.
It's because it's a marketplace.
It's a marketplace.
And it's a fraud of the marketplace.
All right. So you're having a commercial marketplace for goods, services, and information. And we prohibit frauds there. But what's a government? Under democracy, a government's a market between the classes for the productive commons. So you have to prohibit fraud in the market. I don't think that's particularly difficult to do. Our government lacked some tools to be able to do it in the past, and partly they couldn't imagine it could be done, right? I mean, right, so,
we respect the limits of the time.
well, I mean, they had prohibitions on the female behavior, right? And the problem is we didn't maintain them with the same discipline. I mean, shrilling, being a Karen, is illegal under the common law, right? The opposite through, which is aggressive resistance, which is this I'm in your face, I'm in your face, I have the right to be in your face, or I have the right to block a road. That's in the common law is illegal. You don't have a right to the right of interference. You have the obligation for non-interference. So all these things are not. We specifically grant the right for protest, which goes back to the community lamppost or bell kind of idea. We have that because we want to defend against our own errors, but that doesn't mean your right of protest includes burning shit down. It means you get to conduct a rational adult argument. All right, and if it in order to get to convince the people, therefore, by convincing the people, you convince the people convince the legislature, which is supposed to be composed of gentlemen who've got a little life experience of them underneath them. Say, yeah, well, I know that sounds like a good fucking idea, but it's a stupid fucking idea. That's not going to work, right? And then you have the court above that, and it says, well, that sounds like a good idea to you, and it seems like it'll work out, but the science says it won't, and that's why we prohibit it. So the court's out there. We have these levels of filter to prevent folly, or which is what the founders called the passions of the populace, right? The common people. And so, where was I going? I was trying to make the argument that we didn't suppress these issues into the 20th century, and 21st century, even though they were part of our law from the at least the 8th or 9th century forward. We just didn't do those things. And they weren't necessary before then, because you're talking about tribes. Right? You don't have polities in the sense of meaning. You have tribes. In Rome you have, and then Rome practiced the common law exactly for reasons I'm saying so. So, in any event, am I still making sense, or have gone down too many rat holes now?
You're still good.
So we went over the law is not protecting the feminine; it's the feminine. Anyway, we are out of our options are now gone from 5 to 3. They are before the court, before the parliament, or by civil war.
Now,
and we can't let the enemy win, because they'll destroy the civilization. We can't have another dark age. So it's like we can't morally let the left win. You can't. It's and they think they're right, but they're not.
So I'm going to tie this back a little bit, because I said early in this conversation, it's like the interesting innovation is that you're openly articulating the issue of the day, which is that the problems that we face appear to be the introduction of the feminine cognitive style at a scale that it's not prepared to deal with. And no one else is saying that. No one else noticed that. Is anybody else talking about that to your knowledge?
I tested this on Red State Secession, who's a sort of brother in arms, so to speak. And he's like, can I convince you of that? And he says, of course. Because he's put out his chart, which is the left and right differences. And I'm like, well, that's just male and female differences, right? And he's like, yeah, of course. Right. So it's not, but what people are trying to say is they're living in a world democracy where they're trying to show They don't understand and try to make a democratic argument. Right? The
That's
left,
because they think it's just a power play.
they're right. And when it's actually a speciation play. In other words, we're trying to speciate because we have the freedom to speciate. In other words, we're wealthy enough that we can follow our instincts. There's no longer sufficient interest in compromise because each of us has sufficient, just the power balance is such that it's roughly a split, right? And so we need to separate because of our instinct to speciate. Instinct to speciate isn't a political bias. It isn't a lack of understanding, right? It isn't a rational preference. It's an instinct for what constitutes moral. And you can't change that, people. You can't change it. You can only find a compromise. And we've said economically there isn't one anymore. So there's no compromise. Then the only way to do it is to separate. Once you separate, you produce moral goods, commons, differently from you produce external goods, goods, services, and information. So now people with different ethics and different morals can conduct trade. And they can satisfy each other's material needs out externally and internally, while we can satisfy our internal needs, right? Our moral biases and needs for community of common interest, different from separately from others. Well, what will happen, of course, is once you make this possible, you're going to get libertarian, conservative, and progressive states, right, that have certain biases, or city states that have certain biases, which will restore us to exactly what we said, which is the equivalent of German free cities and territories, right? So what's the difference between a city and a territory? There isn't any, except that you're trying to create a border, right? And a border is now not farmers, right, which is what we think of borders, for farmers and farmland. It's now people with high population density and low responsibility, and people with low population density and high responsibility. And those two, responsibility and irresponsibility, require two different ethical codes and two different demands for commons. So I mean, it's just that's what's going to happen. That's the only way to reconcile the problem. And what will happen is, the people who live in the cities that we consider white flight, but it's middle class flight. People who are from the middle class and want to stay in a liberal world will stay in the cities, the blue cities, and people who want a high trust polity, right, which is with high responsibility, will move to the territories. Now the territories will build up bigger cities. Urban places will maintain big cities, right? And now we'll have conservative, libertarian, and progressive cities. And what will happen, of course, as I predict, is that you will get the commons that result as a proportion to the responsibility.
Yes.
Right. And so what will happen is the quality of the commons will go down in the blue cities, like it's been going down. We'll have to wall them off, basically, to prevent the harms these places produce, like San Francisco and Los Angeles are producing harm. Seattle now is producing harm. So these places are producing harms. New York and New Jersey produce harm. You have to limit. We have to have borders between these places, right? Because you don't want the crimes of the urban areas to come into the high trust to the rural non-urban areas. Or the blue, you want the blue to not come into the red, because blues, and the reason you go to a blue area is for responsibility. That's what you go there for. So what are companies going to do? Well, companies will just decide which labor force they need, and they will go to wherever that is. So what I expect to happen is favelas and European cities, and that's what will happen. You'll have places where we can self-select into, and then we'll have hedonistic and entertaining cities we can all go for prostitution, right? And where the people with odd sex interests can go live, right? And the poor can live off of the redistribution, right? We'll go into those places, and for labor may be cheaper there, because some labor may be cheaper there. Certainly, drug dealing will be. So I mean, and then what happens is you've got a revitalization of the territories because of this. So we'll just sort naturally, which is what we want to do. I mean, I keep saying the United States was built off the German model, because that was the model of the day, right? That was the Germanic civilization model of the day. And we had, more of our population was German and spoke German than English. I mean, people forget the only reason the Constitution is in English and German is because it was costly to produce in German. And I was a little worried that the translation wouldn't be exactly the same. I was like, how do we know this says exactly the same thing? Right? And then, but they were just fucking cheap. Why did they send the slaves back to Africa? They wanted to. It was the right answer, but they were fucking cheap. Goddamn fucking northern Protestant cheap fuckers. Anyway, sorry, did you hear me say it? Did you get? I said that just to get a laugh out of you, and I didn't. And it took.
Gotta chuckle, man. What do you want?
Well, I mean, I expected. I'm like, I'm trying to make sure Brad's entertained.
Oh my, it is. It's so but it's all. It goes back to the trends are all heading in the right direction. It looks like.
Yeah, we didn't say that a year ago. So what tipped it? What tipped it was moms. He just went for the kids, and grooming is just not gonna fly.
Cool. It's not.
That's
cool.
not cool. You do get women saying that we should let people be all they are, and it's like, well, letting people and grooming them are two different things, right? And the other thing is that we know that most of this sexual bizarritude is just a normal phase we go through as we're developing, and that if you get off base, it's called a mental illness. Sexual dysphoria is a mental illness, so we can fix the mental illness. Does that mean if you're 2 years old and you're born gay, it's going to be different? No, you're going to be gay. That's different from saying gender. That's different from gender dysphoria, right? I mean, I kind of like gay guys, so I'm not. If gay women didn't hate men in general, I'd be fine with them too. I'm kind of fond of having gay guys in the world, so I don't see it as. I saw a beautiful. This is how I look at it. I saw two gay guys who used. They're both actors, they're famous actors. They use surrogates to have their own kids, and they've got a family of 4. I'm like, okay, right? If that's the fucking goal, that's responsibility. I'm good, right? The idea may disgust me, but politically, I can't object to it, right? Please don't hit on me, but otherwise, I think that it really grosses me out, like you wouldn't believe. But it makes me want to hurt you. It really grosses me out. So please don't hit on me. Otherwise, I'm fucking fine with it, right?
How would I return the favor? Not hit on you back.
Just really, again, we're in art school, right? I mean, it's like 4 straight guys in the building,
right?
Right. I mean, which was great, by the way. Talk about chick hunting 101. Oh, just like a target-rich environment. Anyway,
more useful actionable information for the younger set.
Yeah, wow. Artsy chicks, man, just can't go wrong. Can't go wrong with artsy chicks. Stay away from the head cases, which is the ones in the crystals and astrology and yoga.
Okay.
A lot of prostitutes in the yoga, by the way. No, you stay away from those. And so, but artsy chicks are awesome. Writer chicks. Writer chicks, they're awesome too. The problem is they get picked fast.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because they tend to be smart and rational and grown up and interesting. Yeah, you can see I've studied this problem with some detail, right? This desirability distribution of chicks, the non-crazies. I've thought about this a lot, obviously. I'm trying to get a laugh out of you. I'm just not getting anywhere to that.
No, I'm thinking we need to have a whole discussion on the subject because I don't want to treat it as laughable. It's too serious, man. It's like of all the conversations that we could have, That one will be among the best conversation for all the dudes to hear.
Well, the thing is that you and I are older guys, but the younger guys, of course, they live in this manosphere world where they're saturated by this stuff. You know, I could add a tiny bit of value to that measurement, because they do it, this 1 to 10 thing isn't quite right. Right. I could add a little bit of value to that discussion. But yeah, they know the crazy, sexy, hot, the crazy hot,
Crazy hot. Yep, the crazy hot ratio.
Ratio thing. You know, everybody knows that. And then, you know, we all know the rich, the male version, which is rich.
It doesn't matter how good you look.
You know, it just doesn't fucking matter. And then, of course, we know what's happened in social media and dating apps, is everybody's selecting by looks, which tells you absolutely nothing. And then, you know, I remember Veronica. She says, Veronica, right? My wife said that she used to say, "It's just makeup, Kurt." And I'm like, "Is it really?" Just no, really watch. She just go through like, "Oh, this is horrible," right? If you can't show up, if a woman shows up to date with more than mascara and lip gloss, you're being sold really good. I remember my wife Laura would get out of the shower and I'm like, absolutely perfect, just like that. Right? Amanda, get out of the shower. Absolutely perfect. And it was a bath girl. Yep. Absolutely perfect, just like that. Don't need anything, right? You see some of these women, you take away their makeup and the filter's like, and what do guys do, right? You know, and today to be a guy, it just sucks. It sucks in the dating market. Otherwise, life is fucking easy. Sorry, I don't mean to, I'm going off in nowhere now. I talked about, I'm trying to, honestly, I'm trying to avoid going down that rat hole. Although in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, here's how we solve the 1 to 10 spectrum and how to do it in 2 dimensions. You know, we can educate this criteria.
And this is for the audience. It's Kurt can't help himself. He has to do it. He has to. He's doing this ratios and define how do I make the spectrum and define it all out. It has to be all. It's doable.
Yeah, well, you know what it is that the marginal difference between, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are zeros and there are tens, but they're obvious. Right? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right. So, you know, the problem is the 4, 5, 6. It's a normal distribution. So it's actually the 3 to 7 where almost everybody is, right? Right. And the problem is that as a guy, you're biased to the lower side of it no matter what you do. Right? Because just how guys are phenotypically arranged. Right? So you have to physically do something to move up the scale, then you have to intellectually do something, and then you have to do socially or productive, economically do something. Right? Do these 3 things. So when you're sitting there and you're here because of your genetics, right? And so you can either gain weight, and that's about all. You can be from the lower classes. You can be stupid, right? You can be crazy, right? You have all these things. And the same thing this way. You can have those same issues like this way. So you have your skin. The problem is that it's not the guys. The class thing is no longer a part of our discourse. And so it's not clear what's happening with in other words, this is happening in a certain sphere of a group of classes. And it's really harmful to that group of classes, but we can disambiguate what's going on and show why. And then once we disambiguate it, figure out how to deal with it. And then you deal with it by the way the guys actually do it, is you tell women the truth about their market value when you're on a date with them. And if enough guys do that, that's our counter. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah.
So you have to create a standard of measurement that's no longer open to, in other words, it's hard for women to maintain the illusion.
Yeah.
And what guys have done is they have failed to do that with enough causal density, enough science for it to become a thing of like, you're on the bottom, sweetie. Right? You know, you think you're a 6, but you're a 3. Which is really easy to do. Right? It's easy to put that together. Now, some guys have done this, they've done work on this, but it's not turned into a science yet, and it's not become, there's no recommendation about how to do it. Like you see young fertile girls that are 18 to 22, and they've got these really high scores on these dating apps. They're not valuing the girl. They're valuing her age.
Yep.
That's a simple thing. But I mean, if you know women very well, it's, you know, okay. This is a lot of landmines.
Yeah, no, it's should tread lightly.
It's just a lot of landmines. But if you know, there's things to know. Like, you know how women age? Like by race, by class, by facial structure, right? You can look like a 5 when you're at 22 or 21 or 19. But when a guy looks at you, he's responding to that fertility. But your long-term value is you're a 3 or a 2. But you're going to age badly. Right? Some girls, you can tell them what they are, right? They're going to age phenomenally. And that distribution is not what you think it is. Because it's like guys, some guys, we don't look good until we're 30. Right? Some girls don't look good until they're 40, 35. But then they look fantastic until they're 70. Right? I mean, this is the issue. We're all focusing on these young fertile things because fertility is what's causing all the excitement up there.
It moves the dopamine.
And then there's the crazy factor, etc., which is how to determine the crazy factor. And you know, the thing is, and when we make that a science, it's very difficult for girls to deny. In other words, we need to do the same social construction that women have by our means. So women have socially constructed a falsehood. We need to socially construct this truth. And once enough guys have socially understood the socially constructed truth in a way that isn't got all this fucking manosphere loading and bullshit on it, right? Which annoys the fuck out. You know? That don't just does.
Sorry.
So you can put that out there and say, you know, well, you know, if I'm a 5, then I should be looking at girls that are 5s and 4s. That's what I should be looking at, right? Maybe 4s and 3s. Because the reality is, the girl needs to want the guy more than the guy wants the girl. That's how it's called. So
That's it.
If that happens, you're good. So we need to correct this. Now, is the manosphere
Sexual marketplace measurements.
right? We need to. So, is the manosphere doing all this? Absolutely. Is it worth my time to invest that in doing that stuff? Only if somebody doesn't come out with it in the next year. Right? I mean, there are tests of it, but you know, you can't use the dating stuff either because you're not talking about value. You're talking about attraction. They're 2 different things, right? You can be attractive a girl can be attractive at 22. A guy might not reach that same point till he's 35. Right? I mean, because that's just how we mature differently. Not very differently. So, you know, until we create I mean, I should be able to take a screenshot of myself without makeup on if I'm a girl, and click, right? And I should, you know, my body actually it should be full body, right? And I can, it's just math. It's just fucking math. We know that beauty is reducible to math because we've done it, right? We know that body form is reducible to math because we've done it. We know some aspects of you. We can ask you survey questions. Which will tell us about how fucking crazy you are. And we can see how you analyze your text and see how crazy you are. And then the problem is the conflation of dating apps, what's called pseudo porn, which is and then pornography. So basically kind of sex work.
Yeah.
All right, the dating apps, OnlyFans, sex work, and pornography. That has introgressed into dating. And of course, what we need to do is extragress.
Differentiate, right?
We need to get that out. So that the dating apps, so there's a distinction between a dating app and if you want a marriage app, a dating app, and a sex world, and those are three different objectives. And I don't know. There's so many ways to fix this problem so quickly, but can we outlaw porn, OnlyFans? We could drive it underground, makes it unprofitable. It just depends if there's a public wish for that. And I think, it never caught me saying this 10 years ago, but I'd do it today. I'd outlaw it.
For what?
I'd outlaw it today, if it were my discretion.
Right.
Because I see the consequence of it. It's like many libertarian ideas. They're really good ideas.
Let's leave them in
They're really bad answers.
Yes, sir.
Like communism. They're really good
Oh
ideas.
my.
They're really great ideas.
It looks good on paper, huh?
It looks good on paper. It's a really, it turns out it's actually a really bad thing. Same thing, I could argue fascism. Sounds really smart. Or the thing you brought up the other day, China. Because I said China, I did the same thing. China, you brought this up yesterday. China did the right thing. I mean, they were doing it optimally. Yeah, well, they were doing what optimally? That they were fact that they had used the financial model instead of the military labor. In other words, they maintained financial incentives instead of military incentives, but they were still militarily operating the country's economy. And okay, well, that's really good. Except you're maintaining those incentives to produce economy, but you're not actually producing the economy. You're just producing financial distortion on a scale that even Americans can't imagine. Right? And you're not producing the market for commons, right, with it. So the reason you want to do the Soviet model or the fascist model of Italy or the fascist model of China is you want to have a means of organizing the production of markets that are behind or developmentally behind. But you have this, soon as a thing becomes sustainable, you get the hell out of it. Like, why did they kill Jack Ma and his freaking empire? It was the stupidest thing in the world. Why? Because he was generating demand for democratic government, which is exactly what you want your industrialists to do. Right? They want the state needs to create the framework that makes businesses possible to scale. And then what you do is once the businesses can scale, the government works out of a progressive role into a regulatory role.
Mm-hmm.
What did Jack Ma and those people do? They started competing with the state sponsors bank that were playing the game of managing all this, but making the state hold all the risk. Well, that was a regulatory failure. It wasn't how you go off. Well, same thing with the building industry. The building industry was not, using the money deposited by buyers to complete the housing project. They're using it to borrow the money to start the next housing project, assuming that that they would deliver and that people would play. Well, that's a regulatory problem. The state failed its regulatory problem. So, I mean, it's the Chinese do it right? Absolutely fucking not. Right? They didn't, because they didn't push corruption out of the system. Well, that's the point of state-sponsored enterprises, is they facilitate the organization of corruption. That's why you turn them over to capital markets, because capital markets turn corruption into profits, which are distributed and paid as taxes, right? And so that's the purpose of capital markets, is to, or commerce, is it prevents state corruption, right? But the freaking Communist Party doesn't want to reduce corruption because that's how they pay people.
Corruption is not a bug, it's a feature.
It's a feature. So I'm like, did the Chinese get it? Well, I was saying this last years. I was saying, well, I agree, China's figured out how to do it right. Yeah, but what does that mean? It means that state investment. In other words, just like what Silicon Valley does for technology, that's how the state should operate, which is how the monarchies operate. And so the Chinese state was doing the same thing. The problem is they weren't turning it over to capital markets and then eliminating corruption in the process, right? Because they were afraid that it would lead to demand for democratic government, which would mean China would fall apart. And the Chinese Communist Party would fall apart, and then all their wealth, all the graft, all their allies would fall apart.
So this institutional inertia is based on the we need this organizational structure that is threatened by the innovation.
Right. And they're like, well, we don't want to, and the reason is they don't want to become like the Soviet Union. Well, you don't have to fail like the Soviet Union, because they try to pull a fucking switch and magic would happen. They're stupid enough to believe Americans. Well, the Chinese said, you can't believe Americans. We don't want to do that. I said, how do we do this? They said their choice was we don't. Instead of saying, you've got to gradually enable this and build regulatory pressure to prevent criminality. So, they've gone and built a fucking dictatorship instead, which is causing capital. I mean, once no investors can't trust you, you've destroyed everything the purpose of the state was designed to do, which is produce the trust sufficient for the formation of capital, right? Which suppresses corruption and provides innovation competitive advantage.
Yep.
I'm talking too much.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it.
You have anything else? Or are we done?
You can be done. Find jaunt today.
I have to go through and write down all the topics we discussed.
I wrote them down.
You did?
I did.
You sent it to me?
This is episode 2099. We were coming into a problem because the next episode is going to be 2100 or 22. I just made that 20. I made up that, and it's like it's failing. It's going to fail.
Why are you failing? What does the number have to do with it?
It's just a number. It's just a number.
Just a number.
So episode 2099. So do hit like and subscribe, notification bells, and leave a lot of comments.
Thanks.
Tell Kurt.
What's that? No, please.
I was going to say, let's just tell Kurt in the comments how much you want him to help fix the sexual marketplace, and maybe we can trick him into making some kind of program to help us in the world. Anyway,
I worked on race.
We get done with his book.
I worked on race this morning. It was what a fault test. Asked me a question about race.
Yep.
Can I show the diagram? Can I show it?
Oh, please do.
Because I was like, well, how wrong am I at this point?
2 hours and change.
No, how wrong am I?
Oh,
how wrong is this chart? And I
won't say until you show it to me.
I hope I think I have it still open. There it is.
On one of the many tabs you keep.
Okay. Share. Share screen.
Needs a noise. Okay, yes.
So what I was trying to say is, I thought this had an error in it. I'll show you in a minute. But has the 4 primary races. right? The 4 speciation events. Right? And my problem was, it was that the problem with only 2 problems that I know of with this. It's just this is all the races of Earth. Now, on a couple of interesting points, is that this is South European, and it should be in this spot right here. It should be over here. And this is Southeastern European and Caucasian. So that's off. And I was saying, well, where does ancestral North Eurasian come in? And the question is, this is where it should be, and I don't feel like this guy is the accurate representation of that. So I need to move this down 1 and or I need to somehow put 2 here, so we can have 2 feedbacks into here. This is correct, but this guy is not quite right. So that's it. Otherwise, the rest of this is correct, right? Now we go from this into Africa, this into Australia, Southeast Asian arc, which is interacting with the East Asians, the arc across India, right? And, the arc between South Eurasia and Africa, because there's bidirectional flow this way. There's bidirectional flow between what we call the South Eurasian people and the Semitic people. Right? There's directional flow between Central Asia and the Iranic people or South Asian people. There's integration between these people and the Turkic, Greek, Eastern Europeans. And then, but what's really interesting is this is the Asian prototype, and this is the neotenous Asian prototype, and this is the neotenous Southeast Asian prototype. And of course, this is the problem: is how do we get from this look, which this one right here, to this, right? Is that there's a ghost population here of ancestral North Eurasians, and I just can't figure out how to get them in here. But once you get into that, you start saying, well, wait a minute, freaking Asians are amazing. There's so many.
Yep.
Right? But there's not so many Africans. And there's the Indians are obvious. Now, there's hardly any South Eurasians. Why are there so many? Well, it's because you need an isolation event to create a speciation event. And so the farther you are from Africa, the easier it is to do it. But the longer you're in place, the harder it is to develop a new variation. So the Asians, like, we forget how much territory they cover. And it's the Americas, the Siberias, Northeast Asia, mainland Asia, West Asia, East, Central Asia. I mean, look at how successful they've been in producing phenotypes. It's amazing to me.
Right.
Europeans, we have basically the northern, the central, the southern, and the old European. And we have the Eastern European, the Uralic, and the Asian, and the Central Asian. But these guys have been incredibly, the Americas are fascinating, really. I mean, the amount of time I could spend on the Americas is hysterical, because they were able to isolate. So the problem is you can't isolate. That's the problem in Africa, is that these people are almost gone now, the San. And these people are back propagation from, these are East Asians. And these people are dominant form in Africa now. Is this interesting at all?
Yeah.
So my point is, I can do a similar thing with sex. With sex differences and desirability, I can produce a grid that's like that, which would be very interesting, and I'd probably get paid for. Anyway.
Wait, attracting more hate. That will be the subtitle of your books. You're like a magnet for the biased people. It's like I hate people who step on my sacred cow. I really don't like it. You got to be the rudest guy I ever met. And that's why I like hanging with you. I'm like, I'm gonna hang with him because he's so totally rude.
Yeah, I don't think I'm being rude. I just think I'm being honest. Or truthful.
I know, and you can't distinguish, and that's okay. Listen, you got like the fact that you know bodyguards says volumes, brother.
I don't even. I just can. I didn't. They just volunteered.
They just showed up,
And you know, you don't want to. I mean, you can see them in my some of my videos.
right?
You don't want to fuck with these guys. My favorite one is like my favorite guys. Right. One of them's a little taller than me, but one of them is fucking huge. Right. I like being around him. It's like being around Eli. Eli's basically a Nordic giant.
Yes.
Half breed. Makes me feel incredibly safe.
Right.
I like big guys.
Recognizes you as his friend, and that's good.
That's good.
Very good. You can't even be. In fact, you're a tribesman, and that's even better.
Yes.
Like.
Anyway,
good.
all right. So, yeah, I'm not too keen on doing the getting more work.
I know. I know.
Well, probably, you know what'll happen is I'll be sitting here at 10:30 at night some night, and it'll make me laugh. And so I'll spend 3 hours on it, and they'll come out, and I'm like, oh shit, they won again. But I mean,
Son of beach.
So anyway, all right, love you, man, and I love the audience. Thank you for it. I wish today wasn't. I had planned to be prepared for today. I got up at 7, but there was just so much stuff to do this morning. You know, so many things to answer and whatever that I didn't get there. But we will get back to some sort of structure relatively short. The problem is I really love this current events chat we do. I just love this. I mean, just really rewarding. All right, love you, man. Thanks
Very
for
good.
all.
Bye-bye, everybody.